difficulties you might have seen today making this tutorial for you guys. In today's tutorial we're going to talk about exceptions. Now if you've been toying around with the challenges a little bit or just trying some new things on your own, you've probably worked across exceptions on multiple occasions. One of the common ones is array out of bounds exceptions. You get it when you're working with arrays and you're not careful enough with the size of your array. And another one that happens often is Nullpointerexception, where you try to work with a variable they haven't assigned a value to yet. So you probably, if you have come across them, you probably guessed that they're basically the same thing as errors, and they really are basically the same thing as errors, just different wording for things. And what we're going to learn about today is if you know error is going to happen, there's a way to go in the code and prevent it. So the way you do that is you decide what code that you think could be causing the error, and you surround it in pointy brackets, and before the pointy bracket put on try. So say try this code, and after that you type in catch, parentheses, the type of exception you think it could get through, and then you put down what you want to do. And by doing that, you handle errors rather than having the program crash. When I say throw an exception, basically same thing as an error occurring. So when there's an exception, an error occurs. That's just the way the vocabulary works. And when you're handling the exception, you're catching the exception, making sure that it doesn't go out into the open and crash the program. So that's what we're going to learn about today. So without any further ado, let's head on to the tutorial. Alright then, so let's get started with our tutorial. I've already saved the class as exceptions.java, and I've defined the class to the main method. So all that's taken care of, let's get started. I'm going to create a simple program where we'll add up two numbers. Should make pretty good sense to you. So I'm going to create one variable, call val0, set it equal to the first argument in our inputs. So simple enough. Whenever I do this, I think it was the 6th tutorial, not 100% sure, but so it should make sense to you. Copying it, pasting it, and making another variable that works with the second input. And now I'm going to create another variable that will be the sum of the two. So I'll make sum equal to val0 plus val1. Alright, and now last but not least I'm going to print out what we get. So, and there we have it. I've just printed out what we get. I think I'm going to make the font size a little smaller. That looks a little better. There we go. Simple program. I'm going to save it and I'm going to compile it. Compile it and find and run it. Let's input two values and it'll give me the sum again, and it seems to go pretty smoothly. So you may think, okay, now we're done, it works. But what the tutorial is about is exceptions, and what exceptions are is they'll catch errors in our code, and oftentimes some stuff, it's errors you can't avoid. Like for instance, if the user were to just forget to put anything down, it would give this error. And if you were to put in like something like that, it would give an error as well. And these are just things that will makes it very annoying for the user, especially if they don't understand what's supposed to happen. And what we call this is it throws an error, and we're gonna find out how to catch the error and to tell the program what to do when we catch the error. So in our code, we're going to type down try bracket. Gonna tab all these, just tab, okay. And there we go. So what this does is it says try this code, and if it throws any errors, if any errors occur, then catch it. And we can just say exception E. And the errors in Java are called exceptions. They're exceptions in our code. That's where it comes from. And what this is going to say is it'll catch any exception. We'll talk about how to make catch more specific exceptions later. But what this will, any exception in general, will trigger this code. And we're just going to say system.out.println something went wrong. There we go. So right now the code's already going to work a lot better, because rather than getting that big error, just compile it again. So now when I try to run it, it says something went wrong, and rather than getting that big block of code that will scare most people, it gives this thing went wrong, and there we go. And now I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to let me just take away this catch thing for a second. I'm going to take away the try as well, and now I'm going to recompile it. So what we're going to do this time, there are two types of errors that I want to check for. When you first off, when you don't put any arguments or don't put enough arguments, it gives you an array index out of bounds exception, because there are different types of exceptions. And if we put down a word instead of a number, it gives us the number format exception. You'll become familiar with these exceptions as you keep working with Java, because there are a lot of them, and as you look at more of them, you'll just get used to them. So both of these exceptions are caused by user error, something we don't have control over. So that's the time when you want to use exception catching. So let's go back over here and do the try thing. Then I'm going to end it. Okay, now I'm going to put on catch again. And in this parentheses, it has to always be an exception, but because it's the concept of polymorphism, what we talked about in the last tutorial, we're allowed to put in things that inherit the exception class. So an example would be array index out of bounds. Oh, exception. This would be an example of where you use polymorphism in Java. So, but if you don't understand, that's okay. Just throwing that out there. But anyway, what this will do is it'll look for the array index out of bounds exception, which is where we don't put enough inputs in there. And then we can, and when it finds that, it'll print out this stuff. You need to input 2 arguments. There we go. So now that we've got that down, let's try recompiling it. There we go. So now I'm going to try not putting in inputs, and it'll tell me you need to input 2 arguments. Alright? But if we put down like that thing, it'll still give us that. So now we want to catch for that as well. So in your code, you can put down multiple catchphrases. So, and for this other error, what is it? It's Numberformatexception. So we'll type that in. Exception. And this one is thrown when whenever the number's in the wrong form. Like we want it to be number and it needs to be in a we want number and it ends up in a word or something like that. So you might be confused by this E part right here. We did it in both of them, and it's important for you to do that. It's so you can reference this exception class in your code. And the time we want to do that is if you want to just print out the error, because sometimes you do want to print out the error. Like if you're debugging it, you want it to be able to tell you exactly where the problem was. So you could say e.print stack trace. I think that's it. Let me just test it. All right, there we go. So yes, print stack trace is the correct. So what that does is, even though we're catching it, it just prints out the error, and it tells us it gives all the information that we might want to know about the error. So that's how you could do that and make use of the E class or the E argument in your catchphrase. So this would be used for debugging. But if you want it to be good for user friendliness, this next thing will be used for user friendliness. I'm not sure that's a word, but I will. So you would put down okay. We'll just print out. You need to put in numbers. So now we've just created a program, and it can check for errors both for the array out of bounds when you don't put enough inputs, or for Numberformatexception when you put it in the wrong type of format. So yeah, let's see, exceptions, items. So if I press that, it'll tell me I need 2 arguments, and I put in 2 arguments and they're the wrong type, and put numbers. And then we'll input numbers and it works fine. So this will make your programs a whole lot more user-friendly. I think you can see how useful this is. So that's all for this tutorial. Stick around for the challenge. Hello, you see this code? You might recognize it. This is the code for my 6th tutorial, strings, basic input, and variable conversions. So the problem with this code is it throws an area index out of bounds exception. And I want you to modify it so that it'll catch it and it'll tell you that you haven't put in enough inputs or whatever is necessary to put in there to make sure that this error is caught. So that's all for this tutorial. I hope you guys learned something from it. Run the outro. You've just watched a Sin4 tutorial. If you found it helpful, please like the video and leave a comment. This helps out my channel. If you found the challenge helpful, you can find more of them at my website, www.sinforge.co. You can also find my games and my other tutorials there. With that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.